There is an Adam Schobel-sized hole in Baylor's 2025 recruiting class, but there is a blueprint for them to get back in the top 3 in the Big 12. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. It has been an up and down month for Baylor football, even with no games, obviously. But they've added some big names out of the transfer portal, or I think good fits for Baylor. But they've also lost some guys not only on the current team, but on what was a very promising 2025 recruiting class. That class takes a hit with Adam Schobel going to Oklahoma State, but there's still plenty of talent in it, and there's more talent visiting Baylor. So I had to check in with the recruiting expert when it comes to the Bears, the great Will Turboff, who is outlining a way for Baylor to get back in the top 3 of the Big 12 in that 2025 recruiting class. Why don't you tell us, Will? Will Turboff of Bears Illustrated 24/7 or 247. Do you say 247, Will?
I say 247.
Okay.
I don't know. I mix it up too. But 24/7.
Well, I don't know. You work there. I'm going to go with that. 247 Sports covering the Baylor Bears. Will Turboff does it all. And we are so thankful to have him back on the show. Will, welcome back to the show, first off. And second off, boy, this has been kind of a wild week in college football in general, right? With the portal and everything. But a big week in the end of the day for the Baylor Bears.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back on. It's been an interesting 4 or 5 days for Baylor. Up to the last few weeks, we kind of assumed they were done in the portal, and Thursday we find out that they're going to have 3 guys, and by Sunday night, Snacks Johnson, Linus Noel, Jaquez Evans, all 3 of those guys are committed. And then you had a pretty good weekend of high school official visits. So, late April is not always the most exciting time in recruiting, especially for teams like Baylor. This is usually when the bigger schools kind of lay their ground on, blue chip prospects. But Baylor was able to bring in a lot of talent that they, are hoping to see in this commit list at some point soon. And yeah, it's like I said, it was very exciting.
Yeah. And let's start with the guys who are coming in through the portal, because, it is a wild time in terms of portal being open, trying to get guys in here right after the spring games have concluded. And it's not always a great sign that you're bringing in a bunch of guys in this window as we see it now. But the way I look at it, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you've followed this as well. I think these 3 guys, Snacks Johnson, Noel, and Evans, come in and could potentially be starters for the Bears. I mean, they had some big holes on this defensive side. Am I off base by thinking that?
Yeah, I don't think so. Especially Evans will be a starter from day one, I expect. That's a position that they needed some help with, the edge spot. Linus Noel is another guy that I assume will probably play a major role depending on how his summer goes. He's only got a year left of eligibility. And he had said that a major part of his decision was somewhere that he was going to, have a very good chance of playing. That's why he ended up choosing Baylor over Arkansas and a couple other schools that were, involved down the stretch. And I assume Snacks Johnson will be bigger of a part of the DB group than he was at Arkansas last year. And he was a pretty good part. Got a few starts in there.
Yeah.
Played really well. So I think these are 3, like you said, day one players. They don't have a lot of time. They didn't come to Baylor to wait around anymore, especially Evans and Noel. So for the defensive line, this was a really important weekend, I think.
Yeah, and I am very excited about the Jaquez Evans for sure, because that was something that we as fans love. Baylor needs a nose tackle really bad. They don't have a nose tackle. And so getting Noel in there is big. But we as fans were like, man, we want a guy who's going to get after the quarterback. And then right after the spring finale, Dave Aranda says, we need someone who can rush the quarterback. And it's like, all right, well, let's do it. And you bring in a Jaquez Evans, and I know there are already people poo-pooing it because they're saying, oh, he's hurt. He only played 6 games last year, and oh, he's coming from Western Kentucky. But you're looking at a guy who was the preseason Conference USA Player of the Year last year and had just monster numbers in 2022. Where Baylor is at as a program in toto and where they're at coming off the 2023 season, how big a commitment is someone like Jaquez Evans? Even though it might not raise a lot of eyebrows, that seems like a perfect fit.
Yeah, I think we've had this conversation before on the Matt Mosley show.
Oh, yes, we have.
Going,
weekdays 3 to 6. Yeah.
When you win as many games as Baylor did in 2023, and you have a lot of questions revolving if the staff will be there in a year or even at the end of the season, you can't go get the guys that are, the top prospects in the portal. Sometimes you have to take some flyers on guys. Sometimes you have to take the ones where there's a lot of questions around them. And from what I can tell, that was the case with Jaquez Evans. But you get a guy that Jamar Chaney, was a staff, was very close to, wasn't his positional coach, but, did work with him a lot on that defense of Western Kentucky. And yeah, they've been talking about it all year. We want older guys. We want guys, we've young positional groups all across the board. And for us, for them to be able to get some guys that have not only played, but have played at a high level. And this is what, we were saying on the Matt Mosley show, 3 to 6 on Monday, is that it is more about that experience and showing that, okay, we're going to go take the guys that we know can do something, as opposed to the blue chip guys out of high school that are a year out of high school now, didn't play at all their freshman year, didn't play at all 2 years, played a couple games, because you don't know what they can do. You don't know what the knock on them was. And with these 3 guys, you know what they can do. They, just look on the stat sheet. You see they've already put up numbers, and that's what Baylor needs. They need proven talent.
Yeah, and you kind of led me into the next part, and that's just to look at these 3 guys in particular, the 3 defensive players they added this week. And I'll even extend that further to someone like a Kurt Daniker out of Ohio, obviously DeQuan Finn out of Toledo, to where, nationally that's not going to make a lot of headlines. But when you're talking about all conference guys, albeit at a conference a step below the Big 12, but in terms of looking at everyone in the transfer portal, because I know, Will, you keep a pulse on the entire transfer portal, it feels like only a few of the very top teams are getting the very top players from other conferences in the portal. And so with Baylor able to try and get those guys from maybe a step below and bring it up, is that kind of the strategy that we should see and expect from a school like Baylor, not just this year, but going forward, not getting all SEC guys, but getting all MAC guys?
It's a year-by-year thing. And I think, if we're in January or December and they've had a winning season and the guys that they brought in look really good, they're probably going to go a different route next year, where, okay, we can afford to get some guys that we need a year or 2 to develop. We can afford to get a guy that we're not really sure about, but we know he has high potential. But I think, and that's what you're seeing across the board in college football right now, is that the approach to the transfer portal has to change every year, because your team is always going to have a different mindset. Just look at the way Ole Miss, kind of stood back the first year or 2, and then realized that their team was getting a lot older, and then went and got the guys from the class of 21 that didn't play at all their freshman year, and got the guys, that year in 22 that did the same thing this year. So I think what Baylor's going to have to do is really just wait and see how the season goes. Obviously, it's the transfer portal is a year-long thing. They're always looking at guys. They're always evaluating guys, saying who's going to go in, 3-4 months ahead of time. But like I said, it's just you got to play it by ear,
All right, got to take a timeout here from the great Will Turboff. We got to pause to talk about Monopoly Go, And I know what you're saying, Cam. You've already talked about that. Stop. But there's just so much good stuff here. I can't stop. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for time tournaments. It's where you work together and you build up each other's boards. So you get the friendship aspect of it. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there is so much to get. You can get those unique stickers. You can trade with friends, complete the albums, big prizes there. There's even cool new playing pieces that you could travel the boards with. And if you want to use your competitive side too, there's hilarious emojis for taunting your other friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new. It feels exciting every day because everything's constantly changing with their tournaments and their challenges. They include their own mini games, like they'll have digging for treasure, a robot pachinko game. There's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win, or the rent frenzies as well. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and download it now for free on Google Play and the App Store. Game back on. All right, let's talk about the recruiting trail. And first, we'll start with the bad, and that it took a hit about a week and a half ago when Adam Schobel announced he was decommitting from Baylor and in the same tweet committing to Oklahoma State, and an in-conference rival. And this is someone that I know you've kept up with his high school career. He had committed in I believe the summer of 22, which was right after his freshman year, and looked like kind of the crown jewel of that 2025 class, which was top 5 in the Big 12. So with that, I know we've still got a lot of time before these kids come on campus, but how big a hit is that not only is it probably your highest rated player, but it's also a premium position like quarterback to lose a recruit there?
Yeah, so Schobel committed, it was actually June of last year, of 23.
Gotcha.
But still, that's around the time. It's early. Sorry. For a team like Baylor, getting a horse over here. It's early.
We're talking
for a
so
team
much
like
recruiting,
Baylor.
Will, man.
Yeah, I know. For him to commit then was huge. A guy that we'd already had ranked, a guy that was seen as kind of 4-star prospect, but he plays at Columbus, so not a lot of people have eyes on him. Right. This could be a guy that could morph into a top 10, top 5 quarterback. Now that hasn't exactly happened, but he did see a lot of contact from other schools. Oklahoma State was not the only one. Houston was not the only one. I would talk to Adam every once in a while, and he was very committed to Baylor up until the end. It was known that Sean Bell was the main reason.
Yep.
I would even say more than Dave Aranda, that he committed to Baylor. And there was a lot of different things going on when Jake Spadwell was brought in, and the decision was made to move Sean Bell to tight ends, and then obviously that wasn't something that he was going to do for Baylor.
Right. Not long term, huh?
Right. And I don't think anyone blames him for it with the way things kind of ended. But then that's when, that was, I guess, January or late December. He makes the move to Houston. Adam starts to look there. And then people find out, okay, maybe he's not as locked in as we thought. Oklahoma State makes the push starting in January and really never looks back. I mean, they get him up there as soon as possible for an official visit. I know Baylor tried very hard for a long time, but it's just one of those cases of things are much different than they were, a year ago.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at a guy like that, and again, you've had a rough season, and this guy knows that he can play somewhere. He's not looking to play from day one, but he's looking to play somewhere at a high level from the time that he's ready. And I think maybe the door is still open. You never know. Weirder things have happened. Weirder things have happened in Baylor quarterback recruiting for years. So you really never know. But it was a big hit. It was definitely a big hit.
And speaking of Baylor quarterback recruiting, because it has had a lot of ups and downs, and to be frank, more downs than ups the last couple of years. When you look at the Austin Novosad situation, obviously that was at the 11th hour right before National Signing Day, so not the Schobel thing leaves a lot more time, but you think of a Novosad, a Pyron, or holding on to guys like Kyron Drones or Jacob Zeno. It's been very tough for Baylor to get high-level Texas high school football quarterbacks and then hang on to them while they're there. So now you had the situation where Novosad dips out and you were kind of scrambling for a class of 23 guy, and then you were missing out on class of 24 guys. You put a lot of eggs in the DJ Lagway basket. And now we sit looking for a 2025 guy, but with the benefit of some more time this time. So where is Baylor? Where should they / where are they looking at that position to fill that hole?
Yeah, I mean, they're looking a couple different ways. I do think that Nate Bennett doesn't get as much credit as he deserves.
Friend of the show, by the way.
Right,
friend of the program.
Friend of everything. He likes everyone's tweets. He's very active on social media. But he has had a great spring from what I've heard, and I think he was kind of forgotten in this class because he wasn't Lagway.
Right.
And it seems like, when I joined in October and people were still talking about Lagway and didn't realize that, Nate Bennett is he had other options. He could have gone somewhere else. And it's not like a kid from California goes, a quarterback from California goes to Baylor too much. So I think they'll be safe. If it comes up a year from now or 2 years from now, Nate Bennett's the guy to start. I don't think anyone will be upset. But yeah, that's a little beside the point. The 2025s a little bit more important. Antoine Hill is a name that has been brought up a couple times. We're not so sure if it's going to be legitimate, but his dad did tell someone that they're looking to set up an official visit to Baylor. He's going to Duke, A&M, Memphis, and one other school. So he's kind of all over the board right now.
Mm-hmm.
He was committed to Colorado for a while. Obviously, he's decommitted because everyone is decommitted from Colorado.
Yeah. And he is from Georgia, if I'm not
mistaken. He is from Georgia. So
yeah,
this is
Texas ties. Yeah.
He's got ties to the program already. I believe he was the first guy they reached out to after Schobel decommitted.
Okay.
So that it's one, I really think Baylor has a slim chance at bringing in a top 100 quarterback this cycle. With the way the class is right now and the expectations for this season, if Baylor makes a big impact, if their recruiting class changes and gets back to the point where it was 2-3 months ago, we're going to have to see a really strong start. And I think the pressure is on from what I've heard from players, from what I've heard from, people within the program. The pressure is on because they know this is an old group right now. I'm sorry, I'm kind of getting beside your question right now.
No, this is good info, though. This is good info. And I do want to ask, because I know you've talked to not just quarterbacks, but players on the offensive side about Jake Spavital and what he brings in. And it's an exciting new offense. It's not for everybody. Like, it didn't corral Schobel enough, but it is one that could excite recruits. Is that what you're hearing, or are we just kind of making that up?
No, not at all. I mean, I've talked to more 2026 quarterbacks than anything else about that. But Schobel, he liked that offense. Mm-hmm. I think in a perfect situation, Spavital's running that offense and Sean Bell is coaching quarterbacks. That obviously didn't happen, and they chose to go another way just because it didn't make sense logistically with who was going to put, coach tight ends. They needed an extra person for that. But yeah, I mean, it's DeQuan Finn. That's a product of
sold him. Yeah,
completely sold him from the start without ever being able to see Spavital run a practice with that. So now you get a guy like a Grant Smith, 2026 quarterback, Keyshawn Henderson, 2026 athlete who Baylor is actually recruiting as a quarterback. I believe he'll end up playing safety. Kaiden Barker out of Galveston. I mean, there's a good number of guys that are super interested. All different types of player want to play in this like air raid type offense. And I think late in this cycle, like I've been saying, if the pressure is on and Baylor starts out really good, there's always moving parts with quarterbacks late in the cycle. There's always guys that end up getting dropped, teams that are, making other moves. And it might, someone might just fall into Baylor's hands. So I wouldn't be scared if we roll into late July or August and there's still not a quarterback on the board.
It is time for you to get to the arena, to the ballpark, the concert venue, wherever you're looking for. Anything that has a ticket, game, concert, comedy show, theater, there's only one place to go, and that is Gametime. Because we know how much of a hassle ticket buying can be through other websites these days. Gametime takes that out. They make it easy for you. I know, revolutionary. It's great. I love using it. And the biggest reason I love it is because you go in there and you see your all-in pricing. You see the view from your seats, and you know right then what you are going to pay for your ticket. No hidden fees within it. So you're not having that price doubled once you go to the fee section. They also have flash deals. They've got zone deals. They've even got the lowest price guarantee. So if you go and you find your event on some other ticketing site and you go to the same section, the same row that you were going to buy with Gametime, and it's cheaper there, Gametime is going to credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply there. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege, COLLEGE at the end, for $20 off. So download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Gotcha. That'll make us sweat, but sure. Back to the 2025 class, Will. This was one, like I'd mentioned earlier, and that you have talked about on this program. This was top 5 in the Big 12 when Schobel was on there. And that is a big hit to take out a top prospect and a top quarterback out of that. But there is still a lot of talent in this 2025 class. And I guess my question to you is similar to one that I asked on the Matt Mosley show, but are they going to be able to get back into that top echelon of the 2025 recruiting class in the Big 12, even with Schobel, taking the class down a little bit? Are they able to climb back up?
Yeah, I think if from doing this the last couple of years, you realize that these top recruiting classes are either led by an assistant coach or one of the best players committed. It's usually the quarterback. So Schobel was the reason. I mean, you look at an Ashton Jones, who, before he announced his commitment, told me, well, I didn't really think Baylor was going to be a spot, but Adam Schobel said it is, so I believe him. And if Baylor has a coach like that, it's Keenan Hall. If he's able to connect with recruits like that, he's more focused on Dallas than anything else. But if he's able to be that guy until they find a player who can just talk to as many recruits as possible, then I think they can. And I think looking at the guys they brought in this past weekend, Max Granville is a guy that Baylor would just be incredible for. And he talks about it every time. He wants to be a part of a successful group, a big recruiting class, a team that could kind of change the mindset somewhere. And not so sure if that's going to be Baylor at this point, but if he decides, about a month from now, that Baylor is the spot, then I think that could be someone that leads your class. Antoine Hill would be another one of those guys. Yeah. Emil Picarella would be another one of those guys. Again, not so sure if Baylor would even be an option for him. But that, in my eyes, is the focus right now, is finding a leader for your class so that we don't have another month where 3-4 guys decommit. And again, it's outstanding circumstances with a lot of these, 2 offensive linemen that committed to Eric Mateos, and then 1 to Chris Kapilovich. So it's just been a lot of different things happening within the last 6 months or so. And it's hard to keep a recruiting class with that.
It sure is. And obviously having the coaching switch around, that's a lot to keep up with from every angle. And I did want to ask about Granville. That's someone that you've followed quite a bit. And Baylor's has a seat at the table. It doesn't mean he's picking up the Baylor hat, but they've got a seat at the table, it looks like. What kind of player is Granville, and what could he do for this class?
Baylor, Granville is a day one player for Baylor. And you talk about the higher ranked guys that they've brought in the last few years. And to say the least, they haven't been used early, even if they're more talented, just because I think the staff has believed and just kind of waiting until you think guys are ready. But in this era, you can't do that. I mean, you can't, for most high profile players, you can't tell them they're going to wait 2 years. That's just not the reality anymore with the transfer portal. And I think Granville is one that they've told, okay, we're going to put you in this jack spot. You can still rush the passer. We're going to drop you back a little bit. And that's something where we have a need right now. And a year from now, we're still going to have a need. No matter what we do this season, we're still going to need you 16 months from now. And he's, he and his family love Baylor. They love how close it is to Houston. They love, the religious aspect of it. And, I think it will come down to Baylor and Oklahoma probably. A&M and Penn State and USC are still involved here. But it seems like this is getting closer to Baylor being in that 2 or 3 spot than they were before.
Wow. I hope no one tells them how that A&M is significantly closer than Waco is, but we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, last question for you, Will. You had mentioned that Baylor has gone more with experience and they're not throwing guys out there day one, and how that might look to prospects, recruits. Has that been something that they have, you talk about them communicating to Granville that he's going to be a part of this right away. Has that been something that coaches in general will communicate to their recruits of like, hey, we really like your prospect, but we're going to build you once you get here?
Yeah, I think for the most part, 90% of the time, that's what you should tell people. And I'm not sure. I'm not, I'm not in these phone calls. I'm not in these official visits. I don't know what they're saying. But I do know that they're not trying to make promises that they can't fulfill. And you can't go out and tell 3 wide receivers, oh, you're gonna start from day one. You're gonna play from day one. When you're already telling the guys in your building that they're gonna play this year or play next year. So I don't think it's as big of a problem as it is a lot of other places. I think recruits understand that Baylor is kind of, as Max Granville said, the mindset has changed, but they're sticking to what they do. And they're not going to go out and lie to prospects and tell them, make all these promises to them. But at the same time, they need to get some wins. And if that means you've got to play some other guys before these blue chip recruits, if they're going to win, then everyone's going to stay on board. That's really all it comes down to.
Yep. He's Will Turboff, Bears Illustrated, 247 Sports. He has got his finger on the pulse of all things Baylor recruiting better than anyone else in the market. Follow him on Twitter at Will Turboff, as well as the Bears Illustrated website, 247 Sports. Will, thanks so much for joining the show again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Too high of praise.
Thank you so much to Will Turboff. He puts it all into that. Like, he really, I say it in all sincerity, he's got his finger on the pulse there. He knows exactly what strings Baylor's pulling, who they're talking to, and he always gets me excited and feeling optimistic because there are backup plans that Baylor's going towards that are pretty good. So thank you again to Will Turboff. Let me know what you think about this offseason. I keep saying they're winning the offseason. Hang the banner. Let me know what you think. Drop that down in the comments below. Are you even worried about losing recruits at this point? We've got a long way before they even get to campus. It's one of those things where I like to get excited about it. Don't try to get too excited, but also don't try to get too down. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We'll be back tomorrow with your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.